Good evening, Alex and Matt. So here I'm going to explain a little bit about the file structure of these projects. If we go into the Oculus Fitness project, we have documents, models, pictures, render pictures, scenes, scripts, and videos. Basically, the scenes folder contains the project files, and the render picture folder contains the rendered image sequences. The pictures folders contains texture dependencies, and the models folder contains model dependencies, which could be, for example, a copy of Botanic resources or FBXs that we extracted from Unreal Engine and their textures. The scripts folder contains the software, the add-ons, and the build that we were using to render from Blender, and a number of render scripts for batch scripting. And in the videos folder is just tests, and the documents just little things. So in the render pictures, we have everything divided into the four projects. We're going to focus on the environment mountain one because it's finished. I'm currently using Virtual Dub 2 to render out a video to upload to YouTube to see what it looks like in 360, or find a 360 video player. H264. But whoops, what's happening? I am synchronizing also, which is taking a while. Dear. It's happened to me in the last recording. Something bad happened. Really wait till everything finishes. I've been pushing this machine like crazy. We have this machine turned on the past 5 days, rendering non-stop. Okay. It looks like we're okay. Back on track. So in the render pictures folder, in the mountains folder, we have this export 18. This is my latest version. Also have some preview renders that I did earlier. In export 18, we have the background pass, which is a single render plate. The cloud pass, which is an a EXR plate. A cloud loop. So the cloud pass is a full 600 frames, and the cloud loop is 1500 frames with an actual loop. And then I have a composite render test. Then I have the 4 foliage, which is a render at 4K, a 600 frame sequence, and then I have an 8K looped foliage. Then I have a single plate 4 rocks. Then I have the fusion render, which is the full loop of 1500 frames. Then we have the middle ground. And then I have the water, which is the 600 frames, and the water loop, which is 1500 frames. And then the cache folders are just cache renders that I used from Eevee. Same with the water cycles cache, which is just a render plate for the reflections. So basically, we're going from taking that particular order almost to set up the tree. So let's load up Fusion. So basically in Fusion, I have the identical tree in Blender, and I have the identical tree in Fusion. Let me just load up the file. If we go into the Oculus Scenes folder and go into the Mountain folder, this is where all this stuff is. So the layout are the blend files that I use to create the layout. The render folder is the one I use to create the renders. Mind map is the one that I use to plan it out. And the libraries is the one that has all the model dependencies and libraries, materials and things. In the composite folder, this is where we're going to look at. We have the Fusion composite, and then we have the foliage, the clouds, the water loop rendering for inside Blender, and the preview 18 render template from Blender, which I did first. And then I have the Fusion composite. So can I drag and drop? Nope. Okay, so here we have the environment margin composite number 1. So number 1, I'm going to just load up the template and make sure the file path is correct. Should be. Let me just double confirm. Export, background, here's the file. For some reason I can't see what's going on. There we go. This took forever to read. Right, so the back plate is basically a high dynamic range. The sun HDRI was quite strong, so you may need to turn that down, but you can't. There is a sun there somewhere. Everything else is like in the light and the shadow. So what I did is I take this back plate and I created a color correction node group. So the color correction node group is basically color curves and a color corrector, which I use to crunch the data a little bit to pop out the shadows and make the sun less bright. I use the same color correcting instance of this group to drive everything. So let's just go back to collapsing this, collapse the group, Control E. So from there, I take a luminance luminance key. This luminance key takes practically the black hole of the ground of the lake and creates a mask. And then I erode the mask just ever so slightly to use this as a mask to mix in the water background. I've labeled all the nodes. So the next layer that we're going to get is the water render sequence loop, which is here. And I transform it a little because there was a little bit of an offset from a bad UV in my EV render, but it didn't affect the actual scale of anything. So I just shuffled it over. I do so the same, I color correct the water a little bit separately, so that's another node group. And then I mix it into the water with an over normal apply, a blend into over with the mask. So if we go into here, we'll let it compile, and why isn't it panning? Keep forgetting what pan button. Okay, let me just zoom in. Here it is, fit. 25%. Fit. Why can't I see it? Oh, I keep forgetting the controls. Maybe the computer's running slow. But anyway, basically, so from there, I take the cloud tint, which is a color, which I can use to tint the clouds. And the next layer we're getting is the cloud layer. So the cloud layer has a double system for mixing in. One is taking a tint mask, which you can use. I use like an extraction from the colors, the gamma color correction, and I turn it into a mask to drive a mixture of the actual cloud color, so we can tint the animated clouds. And then I mix them in using the same alpha channel with a little bit of a color clamp, I guess you could say, with a low and a high luma clamp to drive the mask of the clouds, and I mix it in. And after that, I take the middle render plate, the same color correction, and I mix it in with its alpha as a mask. Then I take the foreground and I mix it in, same concept as the middle ground. And then I take the foliage loop, which is 1500 frames, and I take the same color correction and I mix in from the alpha of the loop right at the end, and then I export. Nice and simple. The only complex part is practically just masking in the lake. So you have the lake with a separate color correction. And that's about it. The one color corrector fixes all of the passes or layers at the same time. And you can obviously do like another secondary layer pass at the end. everything is 32 bits, everything is 8K, so it's going to be extremely slow as you process everything, and it took about 16 hours to render all the 1500 frames. So I've rendered everything out in PNG as 8-bit at the moment, but I do recommend the final result to not be full 32-bit if you can, because each frame is about 130 to 160 megabytes per frame, and it takes about 60 to 70 seconds to render each frame, and there are 1500 of them. So there you go, gives you an idea. But this is ready to go. Make sure you have time to start rendering this out soon. So that's basically the environment mountain composite and the file structure. The video is currently now at 50%. So here's the end result. Since I'm using TeamViewer, my color space is completely out of whack. But here's the 8K video. A little bit more higher contrast, a bit more saturated sky with the reflections on the lake. The clouds are looping around at different points. The lake as well is looping. The grass on the ground comes alive and stops moving, like as if there's some breeze. Not the whole grass, just some select pieces of the grass nearby. The middle and foreground, and the rock is much bigger. You're good to go. So here's my delivery for this project. Guess from my end it's considered closed unless you have some drastic changes that you need to do, and that means we would have to do the whole re-rendering process again, which is expensive. So hopefully it's and there's enough flexibility in the passes. Just to let you know as well, the AOVs of the 8K backplates, they exist, so you have access to the AOVs that you requested. So good luck. It's practically done. Just hopefully the animation looks good once I finish the video. But from the small previews, from what I understand, it should be okay. So thanks for this project. I really enjoyed it. It was good fun. I hope to work with you guys in the future again. And it's also nice to have an American salary, so highly appreciate that. Have a good evening.